We're going to review how to program Lutron Homeworks systems when the engraving has been already configured. This is going to apply to Palladium projects primarily, but also any other project in which the engraving has been decided and ordered prior to programming. We're going to assume that all lighting legs have been wrung out and are correct in our system, and that the engraving here is accurate and final. Even if it's not installed, it's already been ordered at this point. We'll start here in the Programming Devices tab, and we're going to use area scenes for the majority of our button modes. This is found under the Lighting Areas dropdown. By default, it's going to filter out to the same area that the keypad is in, but if you want to make it a little bit easier to navigate around, you can go up a level or two in the area tree. I'm going to do that just because I might be configuring multiple different areas or an adjacent area to the one that the keypad's in. For any button that has a room name, in this case entry, indicating the foyer of the house, I'm going to check the area that it's in, and I'm going to make sure my button functionality is toggle and my LED functionality is room. This is simply going to turn the entry or foyer on and off with each button press, and the button is going to be backlit if the entry, if anything in the entry is on, even if it's been turned on from another keypad or from another integrated system like Savant. The exterior buttons are typically going to be lighting that's right outside where this keypad is located. I happen to know that this is at the front door, and I happen to know that I've got some sconces out there that I want to turn on. So I'm going to use lighting zones for this instead. And I'll find building exterior, front yard, porch, and I'm again going to toggle these loads and use room logic so I know that if they're on, even if they've been turned on by another device. For these home and away buttons, I'm going to use a shared scene, and at this time I'm not going to worry about exactly what those home and away scenes do. I'm just going to make sure I set them up. Because I haven't defined any scenes yet, I'm going to go ahead and populate a list of the ones that I know I'm going to need. I may end up adding more scenes than this, but this will do for today. And again, I'm going to circle back and program all those area scenes at once after I've finished configuring my keypads. This lets me apply those scenes, and then once I program the scenes themselves, these buttons will do whatever that functionality is supposed to be. So I'm going to circle through. I'm going to use the lighting areas for the majority of my programming. This keypad's in the hallway. And let's see. May have to. In this case, my room here is set up and actually includes a few different areas, so I'm going to have to go in and toggle loads for a couple of these buttons instead of area scenes. For the hallway, and I can tell that this is in the east hallway, I'm just going to toggle these down lights. Again, toggle and room functionality. For the entry, I'm going to toggle just these center loads. And you know what, I'll go back and fix this button in the other room. I can actually just copy this and paste it. I'm going to replace this programming, and I'll double check that that's the same as this button over here. This is the west hallway, so I'll do the same thing, but for the west, west wing east, yeah, west downlights. East wing. And then I'm going to paste this entry button again. If the button name is the same, it should function the same as another button on another keypad. So again, I can just keep pasting. This keypad is back in the east wing, so I'm going to toggle my east down lights. And the west wing, toggle my west down lights. Paste my entry again. This is a keypad in a powder room, and in this case, because there's going to be a fan load in here, I could choose to either use an area scene or use lighting zones. I'll go and use a lighting area here. Again, toggle and room functionality. For the fan, I'm going to have to go and specifically call out the powder room fan. Double check that there's only one. That's correct. I happen to know that this is in the master hall, this laundry entry keypad. I'll start off with a area scene here because that's the easiest way to make sure I'm controlling everything in this room. It's possible that the homeowner may tell us that they don't want certain lights on, and that's really easy to affect by going into the area scenes and then just changing scene 1 to not activate all of the loads in that scene, in that area. They've got a master button here. This is really intended to control the master suite. So I'm going to, with master vestibule at least, I'm going to start off with the vestibule. I may or may not want to control the bedroom too. I can certainly circle back to this during a walkthrough with the homeowner and verify that this functionality is exactly what they want. This will at least make the button do something relatively straightforward that is indicated by what the engraving is. I've got the same hallway here, so I'm going to edit the same area scene. And this is convenient because if I edit that area scene, I've just changed it on all of these buttons that I've used that area scene on. Whereas if I've called out specific loads, I'm going to go and repeat that in various areas, kind of like I'm going to have to do probably for the entry scene. Great room is something that there's going to be a whole bunch of buttons that are going to call out this same area scene. And instead of editing the loads on every single button or copying and pasting them a bunch of times, I'm just going to edit that scene once, and then that's going to stick and be applied to all the buttons that are that say great room. Evening here is probably going to be a shared scene, so I'll go ahead and switch over to my shared scenes. Add evening, I'll probably add an entertain as well. And then I just check use shared scene and evening. Again, great room entry, because the way my entry is configured, I'm going to just check these three. Another thing I can do here is go and separate out this foyer to make it a couple of different rooms, an entry, an east hall, and a west hall. That would allow me to use area scenes for this entry button, which would probably be a more effective way of programming, especially if I'm going to go and tweak some of those entry settings, some of those scenes to something other than just all on full. So I probably should have done that before I started. I've got some shades here. That's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to do a shade toggle. I don't know if the shades have been brought in here. Let's take a look. Excuse me. They have. And so I'm just going to toggle my great room shades. Again, I'll have to verify that they want forgot to change the button type. I actually want open, stop, close for single shade buttons. We may get more advanced because we have a couple of different shades we might want to control from here. But this is good functionality just to start with, and this is good for an initial walkthrough. And during that walkthrough, we can fine-tune things a lot more quickly once we've got the buttons all working. So I happen to know that this is near the back of the house and near the covered patio, so I'm just going to hit all those lights in the covered patio. And then here, I'm going to toggle those same shades, again with that open, stop, close functionality. So you can see it's pretty quick to go through with lighting areas or area scenes and get some functionality out of these buttons, and that's pretty accurate. And then when I do want to eventually edit those, just editing that one area scene is going to make all those buttons that say Great Room do the same thing. So it makes it really quick to dial in the scenes as well. You can sort of think of area scenes as pre-configured shared scenes in each room. So I think that's enough where you get the idea of area scene, of how to program area scenes to buttons. Now let's go look at what an area scene actually is. Under the programming dropdown, area scenes is one of the options. I'll just go to the Great Room since we were working in there. By default, the system's going to populate scene 1, 2, 3, 4, and off. Off is pretty straightforward. You want everything at 0%. The only thing you may want to change is the delay on the off scene or the fade. And you could change the names of these. And oh, here we go. So fade time for this scene for all zones is 2 seconds. That's fine on an off scene. On an on scene, I like to change that to 1, especially if it's a bright on scene. That's a little bit more satisfying. I can also change the name of these. I can say bright and evening. If I wanted to have more and actually use more scenes per room, I could change those also. You could delete these if you wanted to clean this up a little bit. It doesn't really hurt to have extra scenes in here. They're just probably not going to be used. My bright scene probably should be pretty high, something around 100% for all of these lights. There may be lights that are accent lights that I want to ignore. If I know exactly which lights I want to turn off, I could change those right here. For now, I'm going to leave this at 100%, but during the walkthrough, this will be something that we'd review with the customer. And the nice thing about area scenes is we can stand in the room, edit this live using this button up here, change these until they're happy with it, and then we've immediately affected all the keypad buttons that are calling that scene. If I've got keypad buttons calling the evening scene, I can do the same thing. I'll take a guess here at what they want. I'm going to leave the fade time on the evening scene at 2 instead of 1 second. I think an evening scene, it's okay to fade on and off more slowly. I'm going to lower the percentage here to 50% by default, and I'm going to take a guess that maybe the downlights by the TV I want even lower than that. I may want cove lighting higher because it's indirect, and sometimes I'll want sconces lower. The best way to get this as accurate as possible would be to be editing it live in the room at nighttime. You can really quickly and easily dial this in when you're doing that. When I'm editing these here off-site ahead of time, I'm using a best guess as to what I want these percentages to be, but this will definitely require a little bit of follow-up later on. So the best practices are to go through the devices and assign a functionality to each button. Make sure your button type and LED type is correct. Then you go through those area scenes room by room, and you just go previous area, next area. And you can do this ahead of time, take a crack at it ahead of time, or do it on site. And edit those functionalities, rename them if you like, delete the extras if you like, to make those a little bit more accurate. And then you do the same thing with shared scenes when you're done with that. And I would go and populate the actual lights I want in my good night. This is a pretty easy one. I'm going to want all the lights at 0% in my good night button. And I'll probably tell the master bedroom to fade for 10 seconds and leave the rest at the default of 2 seconds. So you can see very quickly and easily I've created some good functionality on these buttons. Exterior all, that's pretty simple too. I'm going to toggle all the exterior lights and I'll put a 0-second fade on that. Evening and entertain will take a little bit more nuance, but one thing I can do if I've gone through and created all my area scenes and created an evening scene is just decide what areas I want to affect and choose the evening area scene for all the rooms that I want to be in my entertain button. So that would probably be great room, kitchen, maybe the foyer, maybe the hallways, the game room, and you would do the same thing with entertain. So once you've created those area scenes, the whole house shared scenes is usually just selecting the area scenes. So it makes the programming a lot more rapid when you're just calling up stuff that you've already done. So that's it for this tutorial. We'll do a more in-depth review of this in a later video.